For hazardous, I would say probably mercury is your most hazardous operation. You have a potential problem with, if you're using heat retorts, of putting a lot of mercury fumes into the air, very poisonous. People die for that kind of thing. So that's your next operation for expense. The next one down, I would say, is probably flotation. Once again, it is a technically intensive operation. You need to know what kind of floating agents you're going to be using. Everything has to be basically the same size, and everything needs to be working right. And then you have a concentrate that now you need to learn how to smelt to a final product. We started in leaching, we got to amalgamation, and now we're at mechanical separation. And as a more of a happy camper, gravity separation would be the best and the most cost efficient. After that, it's, I guess the easiest would be what you'd have to say was sluices. I knew I'd get to it eventually. Sluices, and actually at that part of this you'll see an operation in the Yukon that they're using sluices. And you'll also notice that they don't have a lot of fine gold. It's all fist size, which is nice. Which is nice, don't get me wrong. I like that fist size gold, but it's not something we have a whole lot of down here in this 48 states.
Okay, what we're going to do here is just sort of set up the table so that you can see what it's working at. Right now you can see that you have little brown lines here from me running it just before we started. And I'll turn it on here, and you'll see the waves, and where the waves are is where your lines are. Now when you're getting this set up, this is what you're looking for, so that you have a nice even flow here. You can see how the waves are nice here and they're jumpy here. What that's from is that this distance is too short, because we're going to be running this in production mode, and we're just setting it up for looking at that. These two sections here are for a testing process. When you're running production, you'll want to see a little bit of gold in this area, no gold in this area. What that's telling you is you're running maximum production. If you start seeing gold down here, you're going to have to adjust things, slow up your ore flow or slow up your water flow. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn a little bit of water on, and then I'm going to put a little ore in here, and we can see how it separates. Now the way the water and the ore gets out from this area of the table, it has to go down underneath this trough, or this ripple, and come out these holes. And that acts like a hydraulic pump. Now, we're setting up for production, and you can see how high the water is up here, whereas if you were only running a 5-gallon bucket or 2 or 3 pounds, normally this area would be about right here. Would it be good for me to set that up so you can see that? It doesn't take much of anything. Okay, now you can see how raising the back of this table up brought this water line all the way back up to here. Which is where you'll want it when you're running a 5-gallon bucket, or maybe a 2 or 3 pounds, to do some testing and find out how your ore's running. Okay, right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of ore in here, so that we can see a separation here. Now what we're doing is we're running this. We're going to be making a concentrate here. We're going to have a nice fine line here. Our tails continue on. Now you can see how the riffles are nice, the waves are nice and smooth, whereas opposed to in here they're a little rough. This is good. If it looked like this up here, that would be bad. Now we're running clean water continually for this demonstration. In a production operation or under normal operation, the water that is coming off of here, just settle out the majority of the material, rerun it. You can rerun your water. It doesn't have to be clean. It can be dirty. We don't care how dirty the water is as long as it will move the ore. Now, as you can see here, we've got our line right here, and that's what we're looking for. Now, when we're testing, this line is here. When we're running production, when we're actually running it, the 100 pounds that we're going to be running here, we'll be running it through this trommel, coming over here, running into this trough. We will actually run this whole line off to the back of the table into a bucket. And this is your concentrate line. As you can see, we just threw a little bit of dirt on here, and we got a little bit of a nice line right there. And this is where your gold is. Your gold is not going to be down in here. This gold is all being forced all the way to the back. The only thing that would be down here is, let's say, if you had a bunch of mercury in your ore and you had large globulars of mercury, they would be down in here, or you had large nuggets. The large nuggets would be down in here. But your fine gold is going to be up here. Okay, now that we see how it's going to be running like this, now we're going to go ahead and set up, and we're going to run it as a production operation. We'll be running it through the trommel, and we're trying to make a slurry and screen our material at the same time and putting it on the table so that we can continue to flow. Okay, now this is our gold line. This is our gold line right up here, and you can see that there's little gold right in here, and that's just out of that little bucket, or there were a couple little scoops that we did. And this is where your gold's going to be. As you can see, all your black sands are up here also. If you have magnetics, they're going to be up in here. There's not going to be any gold down here. For production, what I'm doing is moving the trough down the table, closer to the primary riffle. What that does is it gives me my ore coming in will now fall into this bed of ore. And as it does that, it keeps everything fluid, and that's very important. We want a nice fluid bed. So now what will happen is I'm going to also lower the table, and the black line that we did have up here at the top, we're going to move that black line all the way to the back. And we're going to put it in a bucket that we're going to use and then reconcentrate at the end of the day. Putting this tape on here because I hate the noise of them. Now what I'm going to do is lower the back end with the leg adjustments so that we bring that water line just about to here. Now you just turn on our water so that we can see it. Okay, you can see how the water line is moving up here. I'm just lowering the table down a little bit. It'll be, depending on the ore, somewhere between a 1.5 and a 2-inch rise from the back here to the front, and that'll bring that ore to the back here. So that it's level from side to side. And the easiest way to do that is sit here and look at your water line. And right now I have the water line is sitting about right here, which is nice and level. All right, we're going to turn it on and see what happens here. What we're going to do is watch for this line of ore to move itself up. Now you can't really see it there, can you? It's actually starting to move itself up. Yeah, I can see a little bit there, yeah. See here, right here? Yeah. All right. As you can see, I lowered the back of the table, and we had our line was just about right here, and now you can see as it's moving up here. It's the same line that we were doing that little test with. All right. What we want to do is move this line when we're not feeding to where it's almost to the top. Because once you start feeding, what you're going to do is you're going to have more ore and more water in here, and that will move it all the way to the top. You have to just play with it a little bit until you get adjusted to set up to do that. But as you can see, your line has already moved up, and here's your gold line again. There's black sands in there and stuff, but there's a little gold in there too. So you can also test small amounts, just like I did, to see what kind of quantities you have. The ratio is for every pound that you run, for each milligram of gold you get back, indicates 2 grams per ton. So you can figure that into your formula. So you can run 2 or 3 pounds or a 50-pound bag, or in our case we're going to run a couple 100 pounds, and we'll see our gold real well. All right, now we're going to set up our trommel and see where we're at and start from there. We're ready. Start pouring. Okay, here we are. This is what that's all about, is we're running it through a trommel, which screens and make a slurry out of it at the same time. Okay, now, as you can see, it's starting to flow into our trough. Here's our overflow, our tails. And here's our line one more time. It's still here. Now, as we get more and more ore in here, it will start moving this up. At which time I'll pull the plug. It's in the center, and then we'll put our concentrates into the bucket. If you had this all set up on an auger that you're automatically feeding, all you would do is make sure that the ore was going into the auger properly, and the table would run itself, and that's the best way to do it. Now, once in a while, what you'll do is you just make sure that you're not packing down. And all you do is you stick your hand in there and you feel that the ore on the table, and if your finger works itself right to the tabletop, then that's all you need to know. Okay, now what we do is every once in a while you check to make sure that your ore body is not packing up in here, which would indicate that the table wasn't bouncing hard enough, you were running too much water or not enough water. You may have to put some weights in the counterweight, depending on what it is. But what you're doing is just checking to make sure it's not packing. What you're doing is you're feeling with your fingers, it touches the ore body that's on the table, and as long as your fingers go right to the table top itself, then you know it's not packing. And that's all we're checking for. Now, as you can see, that most of our ore is coming right out of here, and that's where we want it. And you just check it to make sure it's not packing. When a table stops, if you stop the table, then you normally will have to come in here and run your finger underneath this bar right here to loosen everything out. But when it's running in production, as long as it hasn't been stopped, then you won't need to be doing that. Not if you have everything set up right. Of course, as a miner, you always are sticking your hands in here just to check to see if anything's going on. Anyway, that's, it's just nature of things. Now you can see back here that our line is now going into our trough, and that's what we're working for. Now you can see we have clean water here, and as long as we have clean water here, we can actually see it, but you don't really need clean water. You can use dirty water, because once everything is set up and running, that's the way it's going to run. Right now we're running about 20 mesh, and that's where our ore is coming out of there, out of the screen itself. It's a lot better if everything is run mechanically and that everything is feeding at the same rate and everything. You get your best recovery when you're doing that, but when you're only running a couple of buckets like we're doing here, you can run it by hand. And if you're not getting any gold out of 2 buckets of ore, you're in trouble. Now, as the table gets heavier with more ore, you have to turn up your bead a little bit more. As you see, we're starting to fill up everything, which is what it's supposed to do. And like I said, you just check in here once in a while and make sure it's still fluid. Now, up here on this line, we can't see our black line that we saw earlier when we were running small samples. The reason is because you're taking off more material. You're not just taking off a couple of an ounce or so out of a couple 100 pounds. What we're going to do is we're going to try and get 3 or 4 pounds out of a couple 100 pounds. 10 isn't too many because you can just throw it right back on the table, get your gold out of it, and take a look at it. You want to be running more concentrates than you would normally do in any other time because you want to make sure that you get all of your black sands, all your magnetics, all of those things that always normally gave you trouble. What you're going to do is you got to concentrate now, and then what we're going to do is rerun it on the table, get the gold right out of it. It's not a problem. The problem is if you don't take enough concentrates and you leave a little gold and then black sands or magnetics, I can't get them out if they're not on the table.